They were still laughing when she bent down to pick up the broken glass. That was the part nobody talked about later. Not the glass itself, not even who dropped it, just the sound of it. That particular kind of laughter that isn't really about something being funny. The kind that means we can do this, and nothing will happen to us. Cassie Harmon was the one who dropped the glass. She'd done it on purpose. Anyone with eyes could see that. She'd set her iced coffee right on the edge of the supply cart, looked directly at the woman pushing it, and then nudged it with 2 fingers like she was flicking away a crumb. The crash echoed off the marble floors of the Alderton Medical Center lobby. Cold coffee spread in a dark puddle across 30 square feet of polished stone. And Winona just knelt down and started picking up the pieces. Her name was Winona Vella, and she was 29 years old, and she had been cleaning the floors of this hospital for the past 4 months. She wore her dark hair pulled back tight. Her uniform was always pressed. She worked the early shift, which meant she arrived before the sun came up and pushed her cart through hallways that were still quiet, still dim, still smelling of antiseptic and the particular sadness that collects in hospitals overnight. She was good at her job. She was fast without rushing, thorough without being in anyone's way. She knew which nurses worked which floors and timed her mopping to their rounds weight. She knew which doctors took their coffee black and left their cups on the floor next to the trash can instead of in it. She knew all of this because she paid attention. She always had. What Cassie Harmon knew about Winona Vella was that she was the cleaning girl, that she was quiet and that she never talked back. "You're going to want to get that up fast," Cassie said, not looking at her. She was already turning back to her colleagues. 2 other nurses in their mid-20s, Bryn Kettler and Joss Fairfax, who had witnessed the whole thing with the particular expression of people who find something entertaining without quite wanting to admit it.
"Before someone slips, she's not,"
Bryn said. "She's a professional." The word came out coded in something that made it mean the opposite of what it said. Joss laughed. Winona kept her eyes down. She was collecting the larger pieces of glass in her palm, pressing her fingers together carefully. A thin line of blood appeared on the inside of her index finger where an edge caught her. She didn't flinch. Cassie glanced back once. "You're bleeding on my floor," she said, and then they walked away. Winona stayed crouched there for a moment after they left. She looked at the blood on her finger. She looked at the mess on the floor. She looked at the coffee still dripping from the side of her cart. Then she opened the small first aid kit she kept clipped to the underside of the cart's lower shelf, put a bandage on her finger, and started mopping. This happened on a Tuesday. By Friday, most of the lobby staff had heard a version of it. The version that circulated was not particularly sympathetic to Winona. In Cassie's telling, she'd simply dropped a glass by accident, and the cleaning woman had made a production out of it, had glared at her, had made everyone uncomfortable. Bryn confirmed this. Joss added a detail about attitude. Winona heard this version secondhand from a woman named Patrice, who worked security at the east entrance, and kept her ear to every conversation that passed through those doors. Patrice told her on a Thursday afternoon, voice low, mouth barely moving, the way you tell someone something you know is going to hurt. "I'm sorry, honey," Patrice said. "People talk." "I know," Winona said. "You want me to say something to someone?" "No." Patrice looked at her for a long moment. "You sure?" Winona smiled. It was a small, private smile, the kind that holds something in rather than letting it out. "I'm sure," she said. What Patrice did not know, what no one at Alderton Medical Center knew, was that Winona Vella's full name was Winona Vella Sutherland. The Sutherland half came from her mother's side, that her mother's maiden name was the same as the name on the gold letters mounted above the hospital's main entrance, Sutherland Institute of Medicine. Alderton Medical Center had been founded 11 years ago by Dr. Renee Sutherland Vella, Winona's mother, using the proceeds from a biotech patent Renee had filed at 34 and spent the next decade defending in court. The hospital had grown from a single-building outpatient clinic to a 4-tower complex, employing over 1,800 people. It was one of the most respected private medical institutions on the eastern seaboard. Winona held a 31% stake in the parent company. At 29 years old, she was the third-largest individual shareholder in a corporation worth approximately $800 million. She had been pushing a mop cart through its lobby for 4 months. Nobody knew why. The question, if anyone had thought to ask it, would have been the obvious one. Why? Why would someone with that kind of money, that kind of access, spend 4 months waking up at 4:30 in the morning to clean floors and empty biohazard bins and wipe down elevator panels with disinfectant? The answer was not complicated. It was just honest. Winona's mother had built something. Something real. Not just profitable, but genuinely good. Renee Sutherland Vela had started this place because she believed that a hospital's culture was set from the bottom up, not from the top down. She used to say, "You want to know if an institution is healthy, don't look at its surgeons. Look at how they treat the people who clean up after them." Renee had died 8 months ago. Not dramatically, not of anything she hadn't seen coming. A slow illness that she'd kept quiet about for 2 years. The way she kept most things quiet. She had been 61. She had still been working the week before she died. She left Winona everything. She also left her a letter. 3 pages, handwritten. Winona had read it so many times, she could close her eyes and see the particular slant of her mother's handwriting, the places where the pen pressed harder when she was making a point. The last paragraph said, "I built that place, but I never really knew it. Not the way the woman who mops the lobby knows it. Not the way the man who empties the trash cans knows it. You want to understand what you've inherited. Actually understand it, you have to start there. You have to start at the bottom and let the place show you what it really is." So that was what Winona did. She applied for a position with the contracted cleaning service. She used her mother's maiden name, not her father's, Vela instead of Vela Sutherland. She showed up for her first shift before sunrise and pushed her cart through the quiet halls and watched. She listened, she paid attention the way she always had. And the place showed her what it was. It was not all bad. That needed to be said. There was a charge nurse on the 3rd floor named Barb Ochoa, who said good morning every single day, genuinely, without distraction, even when she was clearly exhausted. There was a resident named Dr. Patel who always moved his coat off the chair in the break room when Winona needed to get to the trash can behind it without being asked. There was an orderly named Tio who brought Winona coffee sometimes, just left it on her cart without saying anything, because he'd noticed she worked a long shift. These people existed. Winona saw them. She noted them, but she also saw Cassie Harmon. Cassie was 26, a registered nurse on the cardiology floor, by all metrics an excellent clinician. She was careful with her patients in a way she was not careful with anyone she considered beneath her. With patients, she was patient, warm, attentive. With Winona, she was something else entirely. It was not always dramatic. The glass thing was dramatic. But most of it was smaller than that. It was Cassie dropping a granola bar wrapper on a floor Winona had just mopped and not breaking stride. It was Cassie speaking to Winona in the slow, slightly raised voice people use when they're not sure someone understands English. Despite the fact that Winona had never given any indication of not understanding English. It was Cassie leaving a passive note on the supply closet door. "This area needs to be sanitized daily, not weekly," addressed to cleaning, as if Winona's role was her entire name. It was Bryn Kettler laughing at all of it. It was Joss Fairfax, who was kinder than the other two, but had apparently decided that going along was easier than pushing back, so she went along. Winona documented everything. A small notebook, kept in the breast pocket of her uniform. Dates, times, descriptions, not written in anger, just written. Her mother had kept notebooks too. It was a habit she'd inherited without realizing it. By the end of month 3, the notebook was half full. The moment that changed things was not dramatic either. It happened on a Wednesday morning, just before 7. Winona was cleaning the corridor outside the cardiology unit when she heard Cassie's voice from inside the break room. Honestly, I don't know why they even hire people like that. There are machines now. Robot mops. Wouldn't have to deal with the language barrier, wouldn't have to babysit. She's not really a. That was Joss's voice, quieter. I'm just saying. Cassie. Confident. You work hard, you go to school, you earn your position, and then you're sharing a building with someone who can barely read the cleaning schedule. Silence. Then Bryn. The one this morning did take forever with that elevator, right? And they stand there and look at you like you're the problem. Winona stood in the corridor. She held her mop with both hands. She was very still. She thought about her mother's letter. Let the place show you what it really is. She thought about the notebook in her pocket. She thought about what she was going to do next. What she did next took 3 weeks to set up properly. The first call was to the hospital's chief operating officer, a man named Gerald Foss, who had worked for Renee for 9 years and was one of the few people who knew the full extent of what Winona had inherited. He had been patient with Winona's plan from the beginning. Concerned, but patient. She could hear the concern on the phone now, underneath his careful professional tone. "You've been there 4 months," he said. "Yes, and you're ready to move forward." "Yes." A long pause. "How bad is it?" Winona thought about the glass, about the wrapper, about people like that, about the woman in her break room who took careful, gentle care of her patients and thought that excused everything else. "Parts of it are good," she said. "I'll tell you about those too." Gerald was quiet for a moment. "Your mother would have done exactly this, you know." "I know," Winona said. "That's why I did it." The morning it happened was an ordinary Thursday. Cassie, Bryn, and Joss arrived for their shift at 7. They swiped their badges, changed into scrubs, collected their assignments. Nothing was different. The hallways looked the same. The elevator opened the same way. The break room smelled like the same bad coffee it always smelled like. What was different was the email. It arrived at 7:14, in every staff inbox simultaneously. It came from an address that most of them had never seen, Sutherlandvellaholdings.com, and the subject line was an introduction. The body of the email was not long. "My name is Winona Vella Sutherland. Most of you don't know me. Some of you may recognize my mother's name. Dr. Renee Sutherland Vella, the founder of this institution. I inherited her majority stake in Sutherland Vella Holdings 8 months ago. As such, I am now the primary decision-making owner of Alderton Medical Center and its parent company. For the past 4 months, I have been working here as a member of the Contracted Environmental Services team. I did this because my mother asked me to. She believed that the only way to truly understand an institution was to begin at the bottom of it. She was right. Beginning immediately, I will be transitioning into my role as acting executive chair. This will involve a comprehensive review of all departments, starting with staff conduct. There are people in this building who represent everything this hospital was built to be. There are others who do not. Over the next several weeks, that distinction will matter. I look forward to meeting many of you officially." Winona Vella Sutherland. Cassie read it twice. Then she read it a third time, standing in the break room, one hand braced against the counter. Bryn was next to her. Neither of them spoke. Joss, across the room, had gone very still. "That's not," Bryn started. "Don't," Cassie said. "But she's the," I said don't. The break room was quiet in the way a room goes quiet when everyone in it is doing rapid internal math that isn't coming out right. Winona arrived at 8. She wore what she'd always worn. The pressed uniform, the hair pulled back. She pushed the same cart through the same lobby entrance she'd used every morning for 4 months. Patrice was at the security desk, and when she saw Winona she stood up, and the expression on her face was something that took Winona a moment to identify. It was pride. "Morning," Patrice said, and her voice had a different quality to it, something that wanted to say "I knew it," but was too composed to. "Morning, Patrice," Winona said. Gerald Foss was waiting in the administrative wing on the 6th floor, along with 2 members of the board and the hospital's HR director, a sharp-eyed woman named Donna Reeves, who had been in the role for 12 years and had, it turned out, her own notebook, her own documentation, complaints that had been filed and not acted on, patterns she had been tracking without, until now, sufficient authority to address. When Winona walked in and sat at the head of the table, nobody seemed to find it strange that she knew where to sit. "Thank you for being here," Winona said. She set her notebook on the table, the small one from her breast pocket, its cover worn at the corners from 4 months of being taken out and put back. "I'd like to start with what went right." She spent the first 20 minutes on that. Barb Ochoa on the 3rd floor, Dr. Patel. Teo with the coffee. 2 pharmacists, she'd observed, who treated every support staff person with the same courtesy they showed each other. A surgical tech who'd stopped in a hallway 3 months ago to help her move a cart that had gotten wedged against a door, not because anyone was watching, just because it needed doing. She named every one of them. She read her notes directly, not from memory, so that the record would be accurate. Donna Reeves was writing things down on her own notepad. "These people," Winona said, "should know that they were seen. I want that communicated to them directly, not as a general compliment but specifically, what they did, when they did it, why it mattered." She looked at Donna. "Can you make sure that happens?" "Absolutely," Donna said. Then Winona turned the page in her notebook. Cassie Harmon was called into the HR office at 10:45. She had spent the morning preparing. She had the speech ready, the acknowledgement, the apology framing, the assurance that it wouldn't happen again. She had calculated how much she could concede without conceding too much. She was good at that. She had been doing it her whole adult life. What she had not prepared for was Winona being in the room, not seated at the side, as a witness, seated at the head, the same position she would have been in at any meeting in that building from that day forward. Winona did not look angry. She looked, if anything, exactly like she had always looked, composed, attentive, present. Cassie realized, with a slow sinking feeling, that she had never actually looked at Winona's face properly before. She had looked past it. She had looked around it. She had looked through it the way you look through a window, when what you want is whatever is on the other side. "Thank you for coming, Cassie," Winona said. Cassie sat down. Donna Reeves opened a folder. The folder was thick. What followed was not a confrontation. It was something more difficult than that. Each incident was named. Not dramatized, not editorially inflated, just described. Factually, chronologically, with dates. The glass, the wrapper, the break room conversation, the note addressed to cleaning. 7 months of smaller things that had been witnessed by others and documented. Cassie heard herself described from the outside, and the person being described was not the person she thought she was. She started to speak twice and stopped both times. "You're an excellent nurse," Winona said. "I want to say that clearly, and I mean it. Your patient outcomes are strong. Your clinical performance reviews are consistently positive." She paused. "This hospital needs good nurses. My mother built this place because people deserve good medical care, and that requires good clinicians." Cassie said nothing. "It also requires a culture," Winona continued, "where every person in this building, regardless of what they're wearing, regardless of what language they speak, regardless of what they earn, is treated as a human being. My mother believed that. She built it into the founding documents of this institution. It has not, in practice, always, been honored." A long silence. "Your employment is not being terminated today," Winona said. "What is being required is a formal conduct improvement plan, a mandatory series of workplace respect and bias training, and a probationary review at 60 days. If the pattern continues in any form, we will revisit this conversation." Cassie nodded. "Once. Small. I'd also like you to know," Winona said, "that the person you called the cleaning girl has a name. It's Winona. And she noticed you. Bryn Kettler's meeting was at noon. Joss Fairfax's was at 1:15. By the end of the day, A number of other matters had been addressed as well. Not just from Winona's notebook, but from Donna Reeves' files, which turned out to contain years of documented behavior that had never been properly actioned. 3 additional staff members from other departments, a pattern on the second floor that had been reported 4 times and ignored each time, because the person filing the report was a part-time employee, and the person being reported was not. Those files were open now. The story would move through the building in the weeks and months that followed the way these things always do. Incomplete, inflated in some tellings, undersold in others. Some people heard that the cleaning woman had turned out to be a billionaire and decided that was the whole story. Some people heard that 3 nurses got fired, which was not accurate. Some people decided the lesson was about watching your back. Those people had missed it. The people who had not missed it were the ones who had always known it. Barb Ochoa, who said good morning every day without expecting anything in return. Dr. Patel, who moved his coat off the chair because someone needed to get to the trash can, and he happened to be in the way. Teo, who left coffee on a cart because a person had a long shift. These people already knew that how you treat someone is not contingent on what they can do for you. They knew it the same way Winona's mother had known it, not because something bad had happened to them, not because someone had caught them, but because it was simply the only way they knew how to be in the world. Winona had a second meeting with Patrice, the security guard from the east entrance, 3 weeks after the Thursday. Over coffee, actual coffee, in Winona's office, on the 6th. "You said you knew," Winona said. "That morning, the way you looked at me." Patrice shook her head. "I didn't know who you were, but—" Patrice wrapped both hands around her cup. "I just kept thinking. She never fights back, but she never looked defeated either. That's not nothing. That's something. Took me a while to figure out what." She looked at Winona. "Now I know what." Winona thought about her mother's letter. About the pen pressing harder on the page where a point mattered. You want to understand what you've inherited, Win. Actually understand it. You have to start there. She had started there. She understood it now. There were things in that building worth protecting, things worth fixing, and now she had the authority to know the difference, not because she'd read reports, or sat in boardrooms, or learned it from the outside looking in, because she had spent 4 months on her feet, in the early morning quiet before the building woke up, watching what the place was, when nobody thought anyone important was looking. And it turned out that what mattered, what had always mattered, was exactly what her mother said it was. Not what you do when eyes are on. What you do when you think they aren't.